Okay, good afternoon. This is Recovery Solutions. This is Amanda Marino. I am the owner of Next Level Recovery Associates. I'm working on going live on Instagram as well, so bear with me. Okay, we're live on all streams. I am here with Phil, otherwise known as Dude Breathe Counseling. I actually told my friend, the trainer yesterday, because him and I did talk about men. I don't know if you saw any of it, but he's a trainer and he talks about men's body dysmorphia. And when he told me he was starting to do that in his coaching and his training along, like if they're
huge problem.
Yeah. And I was like, we have to talk about this live. And so I told him I was having you on today. And he was like, I love that name. You know what I mean? Like, I think it gives men I know you see couples, women too, but I think there's something that like gives guys some comfort with your name. So love for you to introduce yourself with that.
Yeah. Sure. My name is Phil Treiber. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. If you can see the rest of my name on this live stream, there's a lot of other letters there as well. And I'm the owner and operator of Dude Breathe Counseling. We are a specialty group practice that focuses on men's psychology. Amanda, you mentioned that we do couples work. I don't do couples work, but I have a couples counselor who works for me, Victoria. So she does the couples work and really approaches it from like a really different way of having that men's psychology understanding, which really helps the guys feel a lot more comfortable to come in, because the whole idea is that the therapeutic space itself is inherently feminine. Relationships themselves are therefore coded as feminine. So when guys have to come into therapy, they're very resistant. They don't want to do it. So I wanted to create a space for them to feel safe and comfortable to come in and talk to another guy.
Absolutely.
Right. And it really is a comfortable environment to where like, all right, dude, what's up? Really laid back.
Did you have other, like when you were trying to come up with this name, like was there any other names that you were like, oh, maybe, or was it like you were like, this is what it has to be? And like, how did that birth? I just kind of, before we dig into that, like I love this name and it's so like I'm big on like breaking norms, and this is breaking the norm. So I love it. I want to hear more about the name.
I'm a big mythology guy, so I was like thinking like Atlas or like Zeus psychotherapy. All my tattoos are like mythologically based. I have Odin on one shoulder, I have the Buddha on another, I have Medusa holding Perseus's head on my quad. So I was like thinking something cool like that. But a number of years ago, my sister was working for a clothing company, and she gave me this flag that said, dude, breathe. And I always had it hanging up. But when I was coming in and I was leaving treatment, working in treatment, I knew that I had to do something unique. I had to do something different because I really truly feel that like my approach and my personality is a lot different from a lot of other therapists. So I didn't want to go with Treiber psychotherapy or something kind of much more generic like that. I wanted to be too unique to reflect the type of care that I wanted to provide, but then also a space and also a community through the men's groups of like men being with men, right? Like iron sharpens iron kind of idea. And that comes from my own personal background, being someone who's in long-term recovery, knowing about what that support could really look like. So I wanted to really break the mold that way.
I love it. It makes a huge statement, and like it shakes up what is traditional while welcoming and opening the door for more people that may be turned off by something that seems, wound tight or whatever from afar. Like it softens the blow.
Yes. And it makes it more palatable for guys. And that's why I'm so active on my social media, and my reels are authentic. They're real. Like they're not scripted, right? I have an idea of what I want to say, but then I just like start talking. If I mess up, I hit stop, start it again. It's just off the top of my head to be authentic and real, because I don't want it to be this really stuffy thing. I want to make therapy and counseling and this concept for men of like a psychological tune-up to be a lot more palatable to them. So we're like, all right, well, maybe I can talk to this guy.
And make it kind of like the cool thing to do. Like actually, as a woman who has my life together, it's very attractive for a man to take care of their mental health. So if you want to get some girls, go to Dude Breathe Counseling.
I do a lot of work with guys to help them get what they need. Obviously we were talking about before, I just turned 37, single. I'd like to think that helps, but it has not been going well for me recently. So, fingers crossed, let the universe do her thing.
Yes.
And then I'll just let it come as it goes.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that you take, you know, and that's the thing too, is like, it's obvious. Like we usually I have people on here oftentimes that I know. We don't really know each other. We
Hmm.
know of each other. And I'm
Hmm.
very drawn to you because of your authenticity, because of, you know, I can tell the kind of, I know that Danielle spoke really highly when she saw you speak, but like, I've heard really good things about you always in the community and things along those lines, but I'm just drawn to you being you. You know, it's not any fluff or anything phony baloney. Like I like that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's kind of, I wake up sometimes and, you know, I'm just so grateful for this opportunity because like I tell people, you know, when I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a psychotherapist. They're like, oh my God, that must be so hard. You must be so tired. I'm like, not really. Like I wake up, my hours are 12 to 8 p.m.,
Yeah.
right? Because a lot of my guys need those later hours. I wake up, I go to the gym for 2 hours. And then like I come into work and I bust guys chops and we chop it up and we have a good time. Like I don't feel like a
I love that.
beautiful thing. Yeah.
I've been feeling a lot like, you know, we've had some changes within my organization, you know, I had a Blake, my best friend and brother, as my business partner for years. And now it's been all mine as of the beginning of the year. And there's been moments where I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. And then there's moments where I'm like, oh my God, thank God I do this. Like, I'm so lucky
Yeah.
for the work that I do, you know, and I truly feel that every day. I don't feel some days, I mean, like, and it's, you know, you probably see like themes, like one day it's like everybody's chaos and it's like, what is going on in the air? And then the next day it's like, oh, you get an email from a client that, you know, is doing well or something that's like a magical divine moment, you know, where you're like, okay, this is it right here. This is gold.
One of my favorite things is terminating with guys, right? They're like, I was with a guy last week and he was like, all right, man, it's like, you know, we want to meet next week. And I was like, no, man. I was like, go spread your wings, man. Go live your life. You're good. Now, of course, it's like, I'm not like saying you can't come back, but I'm like, hey, man, like, let's take 3 weeks to a month, really continue to keep putting in the work that you've been doing. Like, everything is going great. You come back in a month from now, we can do a check-in, maintenance, little tweaks. But I told him, I was like, listen, dude, like, there's a lot of guys who really need help. You're okay for now, man. Like, we've met your treatment goals. I was like, you know, baby bird from the nest, you know, go live your life. And it's one of my favorite things.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful and right thing to do too. Like, we know when, and amongst our team, like when it's time and somebody's just like hung on for too long in the comfort zone. And we're like, listen, we think you're ready. And we titrate down slowly, of course. And
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Always available to support, but we don't want people to need us forever. Right. Like, and then you are there. And then it's in case the same things come back, like, guess what? There's already that established relationship. Like, the funniest thing was my relationship therapist we were doing our last session after like my divorce and like all these changes I had in my life. And then that week we had our last session, I had a breakup, and then we jumped up to twice a week.
Yeah. You always can come. Yeah. Tweak it. You always can.
I'm with her again now once a week I've been with her for almost 4 years, but I've had so many things in that realm that have changed that I need her. And I've been in therapy since I was 7. So
yeah. And the beautiful thing is that like, when I work with guys and they meet their treatment goals and they get into a healthy relationship, right? Like, we heal outside of relationship, but then we also do a lot of healing in relationship, because there are things like you could develop yourself into the greatest version of you. You are self-actualizing, you're firing on all cylinders, but then you get into a relationship and you're like, hey dude, like, she's not texting me back like right away. Yeah. Right. So then it's like that angst attachment comes out and we like start to like other little things pop their heads up. And it's like kind of playing whack-a-mole at times. But again, it's just circling back around to, okay, man, like, remember that thing we talked about 3 months ago? This is now a different version of that. What tools were you utilizing or what insights did you gain during that time that we can apply here? Absolutely. And they're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, yeah, dude, you got this stuff inside of you already. Right. Now, of course, I'm not like that stoked in session when they're really struggling. I'm not like smiling and laughing at them.
See somebody make a connection that does, I'm sure, excite you, you know? And I think there's a lot of men, and you can help me expand on this, that think that they don't have this emotional bandwidth or capacity, but they absolutely do. It's just not tapped into or comfortable. Right. I think they have it and they just don't know that they have it, in my experience. So
it depends on what they're coming from, depends on like their culture, their background, whether they're in recovery or not. It really kind of goes all around in different ways, because as human beings, we have that capacity.
Yeah.
It's just that sometimes, like, I've been working with a guy who was that way for a long time and then went through some traumas, and now he is extremely black and white and logical with his responses to things because his pattern taught him to shut down his emotions because they were a liability.
Yeah.
So at that point, we're talking about like turning them up a little bit. There's other guys who were raised by like very like masculine, traditional type fathers, like the John Wayne or a blue collar guy, to where like, no, you're a man, you don't experience emotion. The only thing you're allowed to do is show happiness.
Is that the most common with men? I'm just going to guess.
It varies.
Okay.
I mean, what all over, we as men through our socialization process, or boys really, as we're growing up, we receive the message that we cannot be perceived as weak and vulnerable, and that's part of showing emotion. Yeah. So most of the guys who come and see me have some variation of that. Yeah. And it depends on age range. It depends on career, socioeconomic background. Experience. It really depends.
Yeah. Life experience.
It all really depends. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so what do you think, that, like, I'd love to hear, we've touched on it, but some more details of why men struggle to reach out for help specifically. Like, why do we need to have a specific topic? Because this is an important topic, right? Men's mental health. Mm-hmm. Why are men so resistant to do this work, or why is it harder for them? So
do you have like 2 hours?
No,
because it's a very complicated question. I mean, I did a 3-hour talk on this at Lynn University at some point, right? I mean, it comes down to the way that we're socialized, right? So it comes down to our socialization process. But then also what I've been really reading recently with newer research is that our society puts men into what we call a double bind, right? So on one side of the equation, we are expected to meet certain expectations and certain roles, right? We're working these blue collar jobs, or working these jobs where emotions are not okay, right? And that really goes down to a much more like evolutionary background piece, to where when we were in tribes or hunting or trying to survive that way, and we were at war or hunting, right? Emotions were a liability.
Yes.
Right. If we were out hunting a deer or a wild boar or something like that, and you turn to the guy next to you like, hey man, like, I'm feeling some tightness in my chest. I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety right now. He'd look at you and be like, that's going to like threaten your life and the lives of the guys around you.
Right.
But then in the other side of it, there's this like educational message being put out there into the world that men need to open up more and be more vulnerable and be more emotional. And it's conflicting. It's not actually helpful. A lot of research is coming out that even just having these conversations or talking to men about being more vulnerable and open, like, hey man, you should do this, it's really conflicting significantly with that overall message. So when it comes to men, what's that?
What's the solution to that?
It comes down to actually pulling on the threads of masculinity and a lot of those traditional things that are good about masculinity, right? In today's day and age, with like the hardcore feminists, right? Which is like the extremists. Because if you look at the actual original work of bell hooks, the original triple OG feminists of the 60s and 70s, they were for men. They supported men. They recognized that, hey, we cannot leave them behind. They're not evil. It's just that we need to modify some of that approach. But now it's completely different. So the thing is that masculinity is a healthy thing, but we need to pull on, it takes strength and courage to address your problems. Right? Like the master and control, being in control of your things, right? That all comes down to those parts of masculinity, which is like, if you actually look at the first page of my website, it talks about that. Hey man, you want to master your problems? Come to talk to me and work through therapy to address that stuff. Right. So it's about using those traditional ways of masculinity, of control and assertiveness and power and courage and strength, to transition that over to, hey, it's courageous to attack your addiction. It's courageous to attack your, trauma, to not let these things control you anymore.
Yes.
And when we take that approach, it makes it a lot more palatable for guys to actually come into treatment, like, substance use or mental health, or outpatient settings like this.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine harnessing the masculinity, like I just kind of never thought of it that way. As instead of doing the opposite of like trying to give you no voice and giving you no, which it is defeating, like you're saying, the research is showing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're forced and pushed into a corner and felt like you don't have a say in something and you're healing, then that's not going to help you with your masculinity or your, as a man healing. So that makes a
Right.
lot.
And that's why, like, we in the men's field, we don't use the word toxic masculinity. We don't use that phrase.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be labeled toxic.
No.
It's hard enough to get men into therapy in the first place, let alone say, oh, by the way, you're toxic. No. Right. So we use the phrase like problematic masculinity, things like that to make it say like, hey, there are some components of some of the stuff that you're showing that aren't great, but let's tweak and work on some of these things.
You see, Susan was on with me yesterday, and
I saw that.
I learned a lot of new things with her about this modern day affair of the digital world. She talked about.
Yeah, I see a lot of those guys. Yeah, Susan and I also, we've worked with a couple of mutual clients together on some of those issues.
Yeah,
huge fan of Susan and her team. Yeah,
it's really enlightening because I mean, and then some things that I may have not even thought were wrong, but I guess were enlightening to me. So I learned a lot yesterday. I'm learning a lot today about how to harness men's mental health. I know what you talked. If you're okay with this, you talked about. I had a video the other day, just kind of, and I had something to say about it with the narcissist, like certain labels that are being thrown out, especially with men. Not really, and it's not helpful. Like for years, everyone was called bipolar, and then everyone's all females that are problematic or borderline personality disorder,
or borderline or histrionic. Yeah.
So we have
these crazy.
Yeah, we have these themes that we go through, and this is one that is a real problem, right?
Real problem.
Being with a narcissist is awful, but it's also being thrown around. So I'd love you to talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of my Instagram of a series of reels speaking about this, and I think I gotta post one today. The thing is that like the same thing with bipolar. Like someone will say like, "Oh, I was so bipolar today." I was like, "Okay, tell me some more." And they're like, "Well, I woke up in a great mood, and then in the afternoon I was sad." I was like, "That's not what bipolar is, right?" The thing about it is that with narcissistic personality disorder is a legitimate diagnosis in the DSM with very specific criteria. Okay. Right. Now, of course, like certain men, I mean, it's definitely skewed more men. Women absolutely can be narcissistic and be diagnosed with that. It's a little more rare. But the thing is that I have this theory that like a lot of the men in relationship or out there in the world, like will get labeled as a narcissist, but most likely they're not. Right. Because if you look at the actual population of the DSM, which I'm not a huge fan of, right? I don't diagnose. It's just like there's too many politics and bullshit involved in it. It's like 1.9%, if not lower, I think, of narcissists. So if like you're in a relationship, like even here in South Florida, if we talk to every woman who's in a difficult relationship with a man, the numbers would be like 60% of the population that would be narcissistic. Well, not a thing.
The truth to be told, like everyone has narcissistic qualities, right? Every human being.
There's healthy narcissism. Absolutely. It's called having self-confidence. Yes. It's called having a healthy sense of self. It's ego. Yes. But the ego in like the recovery world in 12-step, ego gets such a bad rap. But if we didn't have an ego, we wouldn't survive. No. Right. But I have this theory, and of course, like I did this presentation for a group of professionals that your colleague was at, and it was literally at the top of the presentation. It says Phil's anecdotal observational theory, not empirically validated, right? Is that like when we dig deeper into the men's psychology field, if you look at a lot of things that men are struggling with being empathetic, being understanding, with their power and control things, being aggressive or assertive or authoritative. Yes. If you look at a lot of those things that are just really masculinity that might be a little bit problematic, it coincides very closely with narcissism.
Yes.
But it's not narcissism.
Yes.
Someone who's a narcissist has a balloon inside of them. Okay. And the only way for them to have that balloon of their, like, to feel okay about themselves is the power and control. It's through unintentional or intentional gaslighting. It's through the validation. It's all the things externally coming into themselves.
Right.
And that's why they do what they do, because, you know, we can summarize narcissism into the complete loss of their true self. They get so attached to this image that they put out there that they literally don't care about the harm they're causing to others.
Right.
But a lot of times in relationships, you know, some guy might invalidate his girlfriend or his boyfriend's, you know, feelings. You're gaslighting me.
Yeah, that's another one that's thrown around too. That people don't know people don't know what these two terms mean. Gaslighting.
Maybe not. Most likely he's not doing it intentionally, but most of the time it comes down to that man lacking emotional intelligence, lacking the ability to recognize, oh, she's in emotion right now, she's a human, etc., but then responding from an empathetic standpoint. Because the way that men and women were raised to communicate is completely different on either side. Absolutely. You know, we're problem solvers. We're trying to, you know, go through these things logically. Women are much more in emotion and have that connection there. So a lot of men, when they're not able to speak those languages, are going to be perceived as narcissistic. And then it's going to get thrown around, and then they're labeled, and it just spins out further and further from there.
Yeah. And what is it like, just before we'll go into Will's question, I really like this question. So like, what are some ways, like specific, just some like bullet points specifically, like to know that someone is one or is, I know you said like the balloon side of, so what are a couple things that can be identified or people like say, oh, you're a narcissist, that are not correct for people that are watching?
I mean, it's like really getting a firm understanding of what the actual diagnosis is. Like you can Google the DSM criteria, right? Also really getting a very clear understanding of what gaslighting is, because gaslighting is a technique that is literally being done intentionally to have the person on the other side question their reality. That is the goal. Right. So that person relies solely on the narcissist as their world, their vision, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
If you're in an argument with your partner and he says, oh, that didn't happen that way, it's most likely unintentional, but it's most likely he's just invalidating your statement. He doesn't see it that way. It's a different perspective. Absolutely. There's not like this conscious motive to, oh, I'm going to have her question her reality, so she relies on me more, and then she's not allowed to see her friends. Like there's a lot of
plotting.
Controlling and plotting that's going on. But sometimes for narcissists, it's the only way that they know how to see the world. So they're not even intentional that they're doing it. Right. Or, you know, understanding that they're doing it. But there's a lot of great resources out there. There's the Gaslighting and Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Workbook and Notebook. There's a lot of great books that Victoria, the couples counselor, that I work with, that she will like read through certain sections and assign reading to her female clients to get like, oh, he's not a narcissist, it's just this over here. So they can really gain a better, you know, because trying to do it on your own, it's going to be tough. Seek the help of a professional, even short term, because you're going to be subjective. You're going to have horse blinders on. You're not going to be able to see the full picture.
And you're going to go by whatever random content you might see. That's why I shared this with Susan yesterday. It's like so important for me to have conversations like this I'm having with you, because if you go on TikTok, you go on Instagram, there are just random people that are just making up stuff, you know? And so for me to have you on here to talk about actual research and actual implementation in your clinical practice, this is quality content, quality information, right? And that's important I feel like people like you and I are responsible for that today, right? We do 100%. We do the work that we do, and we, you know, like I don't pretend to be a therapist. I'm not a therapist. I am a coach. I'm an interventionist. I work with a lot of therapists. I have a mom who's a psych nurse. I've been in this realm my whole life. I'm in recovery, but I trust my clinical professionals on my team to do the clinical work. And if I refer someone to someone, follow their clinical lead. And I don't ever try to dictate care, because I'm not providing the care.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, because it's the same thing. It's like I'll even hear, like, I'll get referrals because I work with men, right? I'll get referrals from other clinicians and be like, hey, like he might be a narcissist, or they're working with the partner and they send the mail to me, like, hey, you should see him. He's probably a narcissist, right? 9 times out of 10, these guys come sit on my couch. They're not narcissists. Now they may have some, like, you know, that traditional masculine ideal of like, yeah, she's going to stay home, she's going to do this, but they're not narcissists. They have empathy. They understand that, hey, I don't like the way that the relationship is going. A narcissist can be like, no, everything's fine. If she only did what I told her to do, everything would be okay. It's very rare that I actually have a full-blown diagnosed narcissistic person or that's suffering from narcissistic personality disorder on my couch.
Yeah, they
And I
probably
work
won't
with
come.
men.
They probably won't come.
They will not come to therapy.
That's the secret sauce.
If someone's a true full-blown narcissist, most likely they are not going to come to therapy, or they will come to therapy with a very sharp stick in their back.
And nothing about that to deal with anything about that.
She's going to leave. I'm only here for her. If I don't do this, something bad's going to happen. There needs to be some type of external factor for them to come into treatment. But even then, most likely they're not going to be doing work, or they won't be open to other perspectives. There are ways, like narcissists are treatable. It's just really difficult. And like with that balloon, that inflated sense of self, and this is Terry Real's work. He's a great, he calls himself a recovering narcissist. With someone who's a narcissist, their inflated sense of self balloon's going to be here. We're going to have to deflate that balloon. They will shame spiral, but then you need to build them back up again.
Yeah.
So that's what we do, is that we come someone, we break them down. That balloon pops. I'm a piece of shit. I'm a piece of garbage, etc. I'm a terrible person. I realize what I'm doing, but then we need to build them back up to being okay.
I love that. And that's a lot of what was talked about. So, that similar with the whole, the cheating and the things that like the aware, what it was called, the affair recovery. So it's not, this is like a sick recovery program like you're doing.
Well, I don't do affair recovery. I leave that to Susan and the experts.
Yours is a narcissist, or you're saying like if you were to deal with someone that was like that, like how the treatment is. I was just comparing it in my head.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's answer Will's question. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
It says, "Hi Amanda, I'd like to hear about entitlement issues. How do you work with denial and entitlement?" Which I know Will does a lot of the work that we do. He's a companion and a coach, and so we end up getting high-end clientele, and sometimes very successful and wealthy individuals can have a sense of entitlement. So I think that's kind of maybe where it comes from, but we'd love to.
Yeah. I mean, the difficulty there is that with the very successful, the high wealth, right? I mean, that's like the golden ghetto type stuff, right? The way that we approach people of high wealth, high wealth. It's a great book. Yeah, my old supervisor, Tommy McGee, had me read it years ago. I barely remember it, but the way that we...
That's so true. I could just felt that when you said that. It's kind of like dude breathe in the golden.
So the thing is, like when we're treating high people with high wealth or who are very successful, it's going to be a very different approach, because the thing is that if you as coaches or clinicians or interventionists are approaching these individuals and we are trying to help them understand that their perspective or their ideas about these things are incorrect, they have a wealth of information, a wealth of experience that tells them, no, my decisions are good. Look at what I've succeeded in. Look what I've accomplished, right? Now, that's, of course, with entrepreneurs who are self-made. When we're working with people of high wealth who are like the daughters and sons who have not done anything on their own, that's a really difficult one, because they still have been ingrained with this sense of entitlement of I'm better than, or this is my life, etc., which is really difficult.
That's the way this works. Things are just handed to me. I don't have to work for anything. It just, that's the norm. And so it's very hard to undo that,
Yeah. And which is why programs that I'm familiar with, like Renaissance with Karen, you start from, ground zero. It's like, hey, yeah, you might have the Ferrari at home and stuff like that, but, they work with the family to kind of remove that so the person can actually develop a sense of self and accomplishing the things that they want to accomplish. But within my practice, like I see guys of high net worth and who are very successful, but it's mostly around relationship stuff to the point. But when I see the entitlement and denial type stuff now in my practice, it's usually with the younger population. It's usually with guys who are like 18 to 24, 18 to 25, who have seen people become successful on TikTok, and they have people in their ear telling them that they're special, that they're different, that they're going to be able to accomplish these things. And why isn't the world providing to me what I need? Right.
Yes.
I'm working with a younger guy right now. He is not doing much. He went to treatment a little bit down here, but he has no direction, but no efficacy, no fire in his life. And he comes in, complains about how he doesn't have a nice enough, more beautiful enough girlfriend. All of his friends have these jobs and careers and money. And why can't I do this? And why can't I do that? And one of the big conversations that I have through the men's work with these guys is, what are you doing to get it?
Oh, yeah.
And actually pulling them down to earth and be like, well, why do you deserve those things? What work have you put into them, etc. Right?
Yeah.
And it really comes down to comparison. A lot of now, specifically with social media, is that if they're seeing their friends with these beautiful women or these jobs and cars and things online, they automatically just assume that I deserve that too.
Absolutely. Especially if they've been around that always and now it's changing. That's a hard one. Like Matt Williams is so good. Matt Williams that owns Pro.
Love Maddie.
Matt is so good with the guy you're describing. Like he will just like he's just so good with that kind of thing, as far as like the logistical implementation of like navigating through those steps, because it's like, there's just so many, and they're young. It's a wide age range for us, young to older, but a lot of individuals that just expect this thing handed to them and don't understand like why. No, I'm not going to take a minimum wage job. No, I'm not going to, but you're living on, someone's couch right now, and you have no money, and your parents pay for everything. So,
it's ego deflation, but it also comes like actually bringing them down to earth in like a very, and I do it my therapeutic way, right? Through like the Socratic questioning, be like, okay, well, what have you done to deserve this? Right. Well, it's like, yeah, you see this, you see your buddy with this and this job and stuff like that. What do you think he did to get those things? Right.
Yeah.
Which it's a difficult aspect, but again, it's really about developing with those guys. Like the solution to that is developing this concept and this idea of self-esteem, right? How do we build real self-esteem? Through esteemable acts. And a lot of the times we men are taught to get these things externally through, let's see, what are they again, right? Attribute-based, performance-based, and others-based self-esteem. If you're relying on your sense of self and your self-worth and the things that you have and the things that are around you, or the things.
Uh-oh. We lost him. Where did he go? Hold on one second. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know what happened to Phil. Hold on one second. Okay, he's going to come back on. So I'm just going to say hello, Pastor Deborah. The work of helping men to have a righteous and balanced mental health is to work in the soul with its identity, concepts, beliefs, and ideas of self and others. The one can help men if they go deeper within. This is beautiful. Thank you for this topic, because this is rarely talked about. Love, Pastor. I'm just reading Pastor Deborah's comment. It's actually very beautiful. So yeah, I paused for a minute and then just decided to keep going.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I apologize for that.
Listen, there's times where I've lost the whole screen. There's been times where one time when I used a different streaming service before this one time it took 30 minutes to get online. Like, I don't know what happened. So that's why I thank God, but there's technology is a thing. So this is, if you see her comment, it's very beautiful.
Yeah, that's exactly what I help guys to do, is that we men are really taught through our experiences to keep things surface level. So when I do some of because I'm a philosophy guy, I'm an existential therapist. Like, I love doing the psychological jumping jacks with guys, the deep stuff, whether it comes to exploring their spirituality, whatever that might be for them, their deeper, core issues when it comes to trauma, right? I do a lot of inner child work. I do EMDR, really getting down to those deeper aspects and digging deep to excise and to move those blocks out of the way that are stopping them from actually having the life that they want. Right. Yeah. And going the deeper aspect of it. That's what I love doing with guys. And I have to really build the rapport with them to where it's like, if we start going into an area, I was working with a guy yesterday, and one of the things we were talking about was, who taught you to shut down your anger? Who taught you that anger was not a good thing to have?
Yes.
And he was like,
what is that protecting? Like, usually it's a protective kind of thing.
he was like, oh, I think that was my dad. And I went, ah. And he goes, oh yeah. I was like, yeah, dude, we're getting into it now, man. And we we use humor as a deflection a little bit, but it does help soften, like, yeah, man, we're going to go to those deep places. The way that I describe therapy, to do that deeper work that Pastor Deborah was talking about, is that they're going to walk a path through the dark and scary woods. I'm going to be behind them with a flashlight over their shoulder, showing them the path, supporting them on that path, but ultimately they're going to have to do that work. Absolutely. And I know that path. I've walked it before, not only myself personally, but I have the skills professionally to do so. So I love doing that deep stuff with them.
Yeah, it's the good stuff, And
it's the fun stuff. Yeah, let's get weird with it. Yeah,
it's scary to dig into things that are painful, that are unknown. All of those things are scary, but the reward in it is just so unbelievable. Going through pain and figuring out why certain things transpire is some of the hardest things ever. Like, I'm solution based. Like, I want to know, this is the problem. That's one thing recovery teaches us, right? This is what goes on. This is what you do to fix it. What I learned in the past 5 years is, guess what, Amanda? Not everything has a solution. Sometimes you have to just sit with it. Sitting with it is hard, but I don't sit with it alone, right? I'm a big talker, communicator, like, share my feelings. I used to be like so closed off as far as emotionally, because I was so focused on like external things, accomplishing goals in my life. So for 4 years, I like didn't feel. And then now I like cry over everything.
And that's most men. Most men don't know how to sit with it. We use unhealthy coping mechanisms such as like dissociation, shutting it down, workaholism, drugs and alcohol, sex, gambling, food, the fitness stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Specifically for a lot of guys in recovery, it becomes money in the gym. Yeah. And you see guys going down this path and be like, you almost can tell, like, oh man, he's going to get high in 6 months. Right. Yeah. Like, they just make those things priorities, to where actually guiding them to sit with it. Like, I'll actually do that with them in session. I'll guide them through, like, okay, where is it in your body? What does it feel like? What is, is it sharp? Is it heavy? Is it in your chest? What color is it? And we kind of work through, and I actually teach them that emotional intelligence, those emotional skills, to where, oh, I said that I came in and I was feeling crappy. Crappy is not a feeling. I pull it apart. Oh, I'm feeling invalidated. This is what feeling invalidated feels like. And it installs that experience in them. So next, a couple weeks later, they come in. I was feeling kind of funky, but I kind of pulled it apart. I was feeling frustrated, as opposed to like that surface level. Oh, I'm feeling good, bad, crappy. You actually be able to pull apart what actual emotion they're experiencing, which is most of the work that I do with the guys that I see. Yeah,
that's fantastic. I mean, I believe that I myself and anyone, I can take anything that's positive and overdo it to the point it's unhealthy. I've done it so many times in my journey of healing. Like, I've, like, when I just became so externally focused on checking marks of what I wanted to my life to happen, I lost myself in that manner. And like you're saying, it happens with men, in men and women in early recovery, and, or in long-term, like, there's so many distractions to not feel in this world, whether they're healthy, unhealthy, whatever, but we can if we don't feel it and go through it and process it, it's going to come out in some other way. It's like,
and that's, and within my own 12-step program, like, the universe has seen to recently, a lot of the guys that come to me to sponsor them have 3, 4, 5 years sober, but they are miserable and dry. So a lot of times, like, that's there. And I've noticed that in my practice as well, that a lot of guys that I've known from the rooms or just around the way, or their friends suggest them, like, they'll come see me. And now more recently, the other counselor I hired, Dr. Matthew Durso, who we're experts in substance use, but then also like gaining that emotional sobriety, which is the absolute point of this thing.
Absolutely.
And that's a thing that a lot of people leave out.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is to identify, like, whether you're in recovery, whether you're not in recovery, whatever, I know in recovery for me, like all the 12-step stuff, like I knew that was important for me, but I
Mm-hmm.
also had a
Mm-hmm.
lifetime of serious trauma that I could not fix with someone who wasn't an expert in this specific area, and I've had to do so much trauma work over the years. And I've accepted that it's an ongoing continual journey. I used to believe kind of like what people think, I think when they sometimes come to recovery, like I'm going to handle my problem with alcohol and put it in this box. I felt like that with trauma for many years of my recovery. And then finally at a trauma intensive, I was like, oh, this is going to keep going and there's not going to be put in its box. And like, that's actually comforting. You know what I mean? Like it actually, because I was always trying to get it to go away or be done with the work. I've done so much work, but it's actually brought me comfort to say, okay, no, when this comes up again and it comes in a different way, you know what to do and you know where to
You have the tools. It almost becomes this friend, but then it's also from the growth mindset. It's a continual learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, like when I had 4 years in recovery, all of a sudden, lawn maintenance equipment. It was everywhere I went. I'd hear it was lawn day everywhere I went, and it was giving me body reactions. I couldn't get it. I don't know why, but when I sat, it took a little time to realize what it was. My sister was kidnapped in front of me on lawn maintenance day by a guy that was dressed up as a lawn maintenance man. So I had to go back and just do some EMDR on that specific scenario.
Right.
And I still don't love the lawn equipment sound, but when I notice it's triggering me different, like, so that it just hit me out of nowhere, and that can happen. It can just come out of nowhere, And that's why dealing with our struggles and handling our mental health is like, it's like do that, and if we don't, it comes out another way, like.
Yeah. Yep. It's huge that way because the same thing. It's like your car breaks down, you go to a mechanic. You break your arm, you go to the ER. If you're struggling with anxiety-like symptoms, depressive-like symptoms, relationship struggles, whatever it might be, you come see a psychotherapist like us. But for some reason, right, men don't approach it that way, right? On my website, I literally said, like, you trying to fix your mental health problems on your own is like going into the garage and healing a broken arm with duct tape and some glue.
Oh, I love
it's
that.
not going to work. You can keep trying.
I love that. Yeah.
But you're going to have to kind of end up coming to speak to one of us. And hopefully, someone you can really relate to.
Yes, I love that. I even hear people go to their primary doctor, and like primary doctors do not have much mental health experience. Like go to a licensed therapist.
They go pills.
Even when it comes to a psychiatrist, I'm super picky, like with who I like. And I mean, Aldo's our primary psychiatrist, Aldo Morales, because he truly sees individuals. But so what would you like to say? I know you probably have sessions, and I have a visit I have to go do. So what do you want? What would you like to say to men out there? Like what someone who's maybe scrolling by this and is struggling in silence, or how can they take the first step here?
I mean, I think one of the most basic messages to get out there is that you're not alone. There are millions upon millions of men who are silently suffering around this planet. It's an epidemic. It's literally like we're in the middle of an unfinished gender revolution to where we have been suffering for so long. We're trying to solve our problems a specific way and it doesn't work. But there is help, whether it's with me or other people, right? Like people contact me. Anybody who contacts me, you're going to get me. It's not a virtual assistant. It's no one else that's working for me. Like you're going to get me. And the same thing, it's like, if we cannot figure out the logistics, or like I'm mostly full right now, I have other therapists that work for me. You want to go through your insurance? Cool. I will help you find somebody in your area that you might be able to link up with, right? I do free consultation calls. I'll get on the phone and chop it up with you, right? To guide you in that general direction. Because the thing is that therapy doesn't have to be this 3-year long process. One of the key things I tell guys on the phone is that my job is to work myself out of a job. I'm not trying to get my hooks into you for a year or two.
No.
Now I have guys that I see consistently, but it's because their life improves and gets better. But then like, okay, how do I make it even better? How do I make it even better? I see guys on a bi-weekly, on a monthly basis,
Yeah.
It's the whole thing is that like we come in, we do some deeper work, we get weird with it, we do some intensive stuff so that like you can see the benefits of it in a short time and your life improves. And it's possible. If this stuff didn't work, I wouldn't have built an entire practice on it. We wouldn't have the field. You know, everyone thinks like, oh, therapy's BS. It doesn't work. I tried therapy in the past. Well, you probably tried it with someone who maybe didn't know what they were doing or you didn't connect with. And that's why I've developed this practice that I have that's different.
Yeah, that's a huge piece. I've had so much therapy over my life. I've had some awful therapists, and I've had some great ones. My hard time for this time go around was like, who can I go to that I don't know?
Yeah. It's funny. There's some people in the industry that I've seen, like, I'll go out and I'll see them at networking events. I was like, yo, what's up? What's good? How are you? But I'm cool. I'm open about all that stuff, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. It's totally separate. Even if it was, but you know, it is, yeah, it's just super important. So one other thing, which I think would be cool, is what would you say to the women in men's life that they see them with a need for therapy? What would you like to say to the women?
Ooh, it's a good one.
I was saving it for last.
Let me start with the logistics stuff first. On my website, there's a free PDF about how to approach a man, whether you're a fiance, a girlfriend, a mother, a son, a daughter, about approaching a man and speaking to him to go about therapy. I'm also releasing, that's another real series that Victoria and I are doing right now. One of the key components of it is that we have to be realistic about our expectations for some of the men in our lives. If you tell him, hey, I want you to go to therapy, and he doesn't pull the trigger for a month or two, don't be surprised. Because what you're asking him to do is going against the programming that we have received our entire lives. It's like asking most men to come to therapy is like asking a fish not to swim. It's a really, really tall order. But that's why, again, I've developed my practice to be like, hey, most of the phone calls I get are from wives, girlfriends, you know, mothers, stuff like that. I say, send them my Instagram. Let them see me on, you know, see my face, hear me speaking about things, see my beard, my tattoos, that this guy is like, oh, this is not some old guy in a jacket and a tie who's going to sit there with a pipe in his mouth when he faces away from him, asking him, hey, how, you know, what does that mean to you? Or just being silent.
You feel
right.
Right. I love sending videos of myself to people to show like I'm not scary.
Yeah. And that's the big component, because when guys can see like, oh, this is just another dude, like I might be able to speak to him, it really helps alleviate that idea of like, okay, I'm going to talk to the guy about his feelings, right? We're not processing trauma out the gate, right? I need to make sure that they're self-care, like all the basic stuff, like, hey man, you exercise and how you eating. All right, you want to lose some weight? Let's talk about macros. Let's talk about these things. All of that stuff comes into play. But it's, you know, asking these guys to come into therapy and make changes is very difficult. So we need to be patient. But on the other side of it,
yes, be patient,
be understanding, but then also getting some guidance from clinicians, like myself, but then also, you know, Victoria, who is a female, who is a couples and marriage family counselor, who also is knowledgeable about men's psychology, so that women can actually understand how men are thinking.
Absolutely.
What the issues that we have, right? All these things like we think is like, no, everyone else has these issues. There are very specific, clinical, empirically validated struggles that men uniquely struggle with.
Yes.
Gender role stress, normative male exothymia, male type depression. All of these things have to be treated a very specific way that they don't teach us that in school.
Absolutely.
I had to do my own individual trainings on these things overall. So it is coming about to like understanding and being realistic about our expectations, but then also seeking out consultations with people who know what they're talking about, because most clinicians don't.
I love that. No, that's great, because I'm sure a lot of women will scroll by this and, you know, maybe identify that their partner needs some therapy, and like, how do you go about that? How do you do it? How do you approach it? And like, you know, bringing it to them and discussing it, and then also being patient and understanding, I think that's what you said. And then also doing consultations with professionals who can help you get, you know, take the next step.
100%.
I think
you could come see Victoria for a month just to learn how to actually do these things appropriately, right? We just started opening up her practice more to working with women, and the asks and people contacting me has been absolutely insane.
I love that. Well, I want to come by and hang out with you guys when I come back from my conference. I'm heading to Tahoe this weekend.
Please do.
Yeah, I'll come by and visit you. Thank you so much. Well, how can people find you, Phil?
They can find me on my website, which is dudebreathecounseling.com. My work cell phone number is on there. You'll see information about me, the services that we offer, and then of course my Instagram, which is at dudebreathecounseling on Instagram, right? So you can find me there, follow, like along. You message me on there. You email me through the website. You text me on my cell phone number there. I'm very clear about that. I get back to people almost immediately, but then also within like 12 hours, right? You message me, I will get back to you. You will hear from me, right? That's something that I'm really, really, really clear about and really passionate about. You will not be left hanging.
Yeah, me too. And I used to say I never, ever missed a message, and I never missed a text or things. I've gotten to the point where I actually have sometimes lately, and I'm trying to be graceful with myself. I never thought that that would happen, but like sometimes I'll come out and I have like, or LinkedIn, I won't go on for a minute. And I'm like, oh my God, because that's my biggest one. So I try to always, I try to always make sure I do, but sometimes I fall short.
Oh, I check LinkedIn like once a month.
But that was the first social area that I put energy and effort into
Got it.
ago. And so I built a large, network across the whole world of about 2,000 people. And that was like the one I put them. And I was probably one of the first people to talk about being in recovery on LinkedIn. And I got so much crap, some support and some crap, but it's created a space now where there's a lot of people that are doing that. And
being in recovery is like hip and cool now. I'm like, well, part of me is like, did you suffer as much as we have? Have you gone through some of the shit that we have? Like, we earned this thing,
The light fell. On that note, a nice great exit. But thank you so much for coming on today. I did put your Instagram and your website here. And we will share some clips and send you some as well. So thank you so much for the work you're doing. Dudes breathe. And
Dude breathe counseling.
I'm saying to the dudes out there to just breathe.
It's one of the main tools. There's a lot more, but you have to come talk to me to get the rest of them.
Yes, go see Phil. All right. Thanks so much, Phil. You've been amazing.
Thank you.